So today we're going to pick up from where we left off last time. The engine is locked down, the cams and the crank, and the flywheel has been removed, and we're ready to do the fun stuff. So let's get to it. The first thing to do with all this stuff is to assemble the bearing and the installation tool and stick them in the freezer. And the reason why we want to stick them in the freezer is so that they will contract a little bit and they'll go in more easily. So you can tell which way around this goes because this has been used before and has been hit with a hammer. So we put the tool over the end, and then we use whatever this is, an 11mm one of these, may actually be a 10, and then just screw that onto the shaft. Don't do it too tight, just enough so that it holds it. Then this whole thing pops into the freezer. Right, so now that we're sure that everything is locked off how it should be, we can undo the two chain tensioners. There's one here and then one here. One's going to be more difficult to get at. It's 32mm. I happen to have a 32mm impact socket, and I'm just going to loosen it up with this. Oh, that's that coming out. There will be oil in there. If all else fails, one of these is good. So just a little bit of oil coming out of there. Not very much. So I will let that drain. Let that drain on the floor. And then see if we can get at the other one. Have to do the other one with a breaker bar. So that's got that. Let's see if we could, there we go. This is going to drip oil as well, so I'll wait for the other one to undrip, and then we're in business. Right, so that's nice and clean. So what we have to do is undo this center nut, and just put a flat blade screwdriver on that, undo the 3 bolts, and then use a couple of screwdrivers to pry it out. But I think I'm going to do the rear main seal first, because that's the easier job. So all we need to do is just drill a little hole on each side in the rubber, put in a screw, and you should be able to pull out the seal. So let's have a go at that. Right, so I drilled a couple of small pilot holes. I should just be able to yank that out now. Let's try pulling this out with some vice grips. And there she goes. And there we have the rear main seal. Yeah, you can definitely see this was wet and leaking at the bottom. Right, now that's out, we'll give it a quick clean with Julie's nail polish remover, the acetone. This feels rock hard. And then slide the new one in. So what you get, this is the rear main seal, this is the tool, and you have a couple of bolts to tighten it down, and then when it bottoms out, that's when you know you're in the right depth. This goes in dry, is my understanding, and it has this blue ring on it to stop you putting your fingers on the surface. So you use that just to push it over and you want to make sure this thing goes in straight. This then fits over the crank like that. And now what we do is we just keep tightening these down, keeping it as level as we can, and that should pull the seal in, and this will bottom out when it's at the right depth. So this takes an 8mm Allen, and we just keep tightening it down like that. And that's it, it's bottomed out. So that is job done. And we'll take it out the easy way. Nice. That actually looks like it's sitting a little deeper than the one was before, but that looks like it's well seated all the way around. Job done. It's amazing how easy these things are with the right tools. You can actually make this pretty easily out of a piece of PVC tubing and some spare metal, just to be able to make it sure it goes in flat. The nice thing about this is it's calibrated so that it goes to exactly the right depth. It's nice. So now the oil is finished draining from the first tensioner, I'll take out the second one. So it's important not to mix these tensioners up, and they actually tell you which is which. This is the one from the passenger side, the one that goes vertically, and you can see here it's got 2 rings, and it has 2 rings on the outside, while the one from the driver's side, the one that goes in horizontally, just has 1 ring and 1 ring around the top. So that's a good way of telling them apart, and it's very important not to mix them up. Right, now for the moment of truth. We've got the tensioners out, so all the tension should be off the chains. If necessary, I can always loosen the one in the front, but I don't think it's necessary. We just need to undo this central bolt on the IMS and then the 3 surrounding bolts, and we can get that cover off. First of all, we remove this nut to loosen this up so we can get the cover off. So this nut comes off, then these 3. This you do with a flat blade screwdriver and a 13mm wrench, spanner, whatever you want to call it. There we go. And the kit comes with a new cover and a new nut, so we don't have to worry about that. Right, so now we need a 13mm. Right here I've got a 13mm socket, and it's not 13mm. It's 10. So these 3 undo their 10mm bolts, and they're not in tight, as you can see. So these bolts get replaced, but I'm going to use them to draw the new one of these in, so I'm going to save those. Let's put that there. Now this needs to be levered off. So I think I found the best way to do this is with the 2 screwdrivers down here. This stops it rotating. You can get them behind and then just pull forwards, and off it comes. It's So we can give this a wipe. A good clean out inside and see that bearing feels fine. Absolutely nothing wrong with that at all. Very smooth. Now for the fun bit. The kit comes with all kinds of bits and pieces. There is this adapter, this which is the actual body of the puller, and then this piece of threaded rod with a washer, and so on and so forth. So what we do is we thread the adapter onto the IMS bearing itself, and of course the bearing is spinning. I have to put my glasses on to look at this. You can just hold it with your finger, but it's important to get it all the way down there. Then this piece goes on. And this piece screws onto the adapter. Right, so then you make sure that that is centered like that. We have to put some oil on this to lubricate it. I happen to have plenty of oil down here. And then we screw this puppy down, and as we screw that down, in theory, it should pull out the bearing. See, that's why we had the oil from earlier. Right, so that's nice and tight there. Don't need all that extra oil. So in theory, all we need to do is put a socket on this, turn that, and it will come out. This looks like it's 1 inch, and I don't have a 1 inch, so here goes nothing. That loud crack, I believe, was the bearing. There's like a spring clip on it. I believe that was that coming loose, and the bearing should now just pull straight out. Either that or it broke. But I don't think so. I think that is just it pulling straight out. This is getting very easy to turn now, so it should be out in a jiffy. And there we have it. And there comes all the oil. And there's the bearing. Yeah, so make sure you have something underneath to collect all the oil that comes out. The tool and the bearing come out together. Fortunately, I did have a pan underneath, which I'd put there before. But that's it. It's great with the right tools. So we'll let that drain. We'll have a good look inside to see what's in there. There was a lot of oil in there. They said to expect some oil. I wasn't expecting that amount of oil. So I can see why, if that bearing fails, why that would be a problem, because the seal fails, then all that oil gets into the bearings and washes the grease out. And that's the problem. So that there is a look down the intermediate shaft. You can see there's a fair amount of oil in there. There's a lot of oil came out, but we'll clean that out. And then the new bearing is chilling in the freezer. Once that's nice and cold, we'll slip that in place and then it'll be job done. All right, here is the final step. This is the new bearing with the tool installed on it. You just put it in place there. And it's been sitting in the freezer for 3 hours. And so it's actually going in very easily here. And you will eventually hear it bottom out. Which I think it has. Let's have a look. I have to put my glasses on for this. You can see the groove that is there to hold it in place. I do believe we are done. So this is the spiral clip that holds everything in place. You just start to feed it in and then with your fingers and then just turn it round and it should feed into the gap. And then the idea is that you just kind of wind it in. Alien. So that's that. Now I'm just going to put the faceplate on, but I can't finish it all off because you need to have sealant under the bolts, and I don't have the sealant. So here's the flange. I just put a tiniest smear of oil on that just to help it slide into place. Now you've got to be careful that you don't knock that centerpiece into the shaft. So the idea is you can just tap it on lightly like that until you get a thread. Just enough thread there to start that, which I do believe I got. That's going to stop that from going in. We can just continue to tap this in, and then what we do is we use those 3 bolts I saved earlier. So these are the old bolts. I'm going to use those just to draw that cover into place. So I'm just going to go around gradually doing these, so pulling that cover straight in. I can feel it. I can just feel it popping in. There we go. Those are all seated. So now I'm going to take them out. There's a sealant that goes underneath the head of the bolts. The bolts are micro encapsulated, i.e. they've got sealant on them. But you just need to put a bit of sealant underneath the head because the holes go all the way through into the block. So I'm going to wait until I have the sealant so I can put this back together, and then I'll put the chain tensioners back in once I've done that. And then we turn the engine over 2 revolutions to make sure that none of the timing has changed. And then we put it back together and fire this puppy up. That is it, job done. So really, the actual replacement of the seal and the bearing really isn't that difficult at all. The reason why this is an expensive job at a garage or at the dealership is because you have to take everything off to get to it. So as far as I'm concerned, this is done. All I've got to figure out now is was the noise that was coming from the transmission due to the dual mass flywheel, which was really on its last legs? So that made the job worth doing, or is there a problem with the transmission in first gear? So that I'm going to investigate tomorrow.